The reason I was like that is that I didn't understand the mind. I didn't understand that I had to train my mind and I had to train my body to come back inside and for me to run my mind, not for my mind to run me. I'm on a new path because I'm training my body. And in that, I'm understanding that I can collapse my mind, that I can bring my mind back, that I can make my mind do what I want it to do. Or I can leave it running in the background and not listen to anything that is. That was life-changing for me.
You know, let's face it, we have negative thoughts from time to time. Some people constantly have negative thoughts. How do I reel it back in and get that sense of control? You know, I am the master of my mind.
The mind's our biggest weakness, not the body. Nobody trains the mind. Once you understand the mind, you're not going to stop it because there's no route. There's no route, so it's just going to keep kicking whatever up. But the more discipline that you have and the more pointed focus that you have, so you're going where you're going, you're not going where the mind tells you to go. Because it's a wonderful servant, it's a terrible master.
Welcome to the 51%, the podcast where we cut through the noise and get back to basics when it comes to women's health. Through expert insights and powerful personal stories, we help you tune into what really matters: your body, your well-being, your life. No one-size-fits-all advice, just real conversations to help you understand your health on your terms. But before we dive in, I've got a quick favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and join the 51% community on our website. It's free and helps us grow, reach more women, and create events that really speak to the health and wealth challenges we all face. And finally, just so you know, everything shared is for information only. It's not medical or financial advice, and always speak to a qualified expert for support that's right for you. Veronica, thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you on. Now, we're here to talk about your incredible, incredible journey. We spoke briefly, and I know that you have been through a very, very long journey. It's been incredible how you've transformed yourself to what you're doing now. So could you introduce yourself and talk about who you are, what you were doing, and your journey to where you are now? That would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shreya. It was lovely to meet you, and thank you for inviting me on. You know, it's always a pleasure. Oh yes, I've had probably 2 lives this lifetime that are completely different. You know, they're so diverse. There's like one black, one white. You know, it's like so different. But for me, you know, I was 36-year-old and I was found nearly dead. The police came, they broke my door down, and they just caught me before I was on my way out. I had overdosed on drugs and alcohol, and that was really the beginning of the end for me. And I had gone to see a friend the week before, and I had been telling them that I was doing all sorts, you know, and I was really frightened of myself. I was actually frightened of going out because every time I went out, Shreya, I actually got into trouble. And this time I thought, I'm going to stay in. This was a weekend, and I stayed in that weekend, and I was in trouble anyway because the police actually. So what had happened was my records got stuck, and they were really loud, and the neighbours, you know, it was going over and over and over on repeat, and they got really worried because they knew that it should never have gone on that long, and they phoned and broke the door down, and that was where they found me. So that was the beginning of me getting into recovery. I phoned that friend up and I said, it's too late. I've had the police here. You know, I mean, I was just dying inside. That's the right word. That would be the word that I would use, is that I was dying inside. And they were like, oh, no, I'll get you, you know, I'll get you in touch with people and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, a week later, once I had got sort of my act together, they put me in front of people, and the mad thing about this was that they sent me to like Alcoholics Anonymous,
Mm.
and I never equated that I had a drink problem.
Okay.
So I was drinking a bottle of vodka a day, and I was smoking somewhere around 20 to 40 cigarettes for the last couple of years of my drinking. And I did not equate that I had a drink problem. I actually thought it was everybody external to me that was the problem, rather than me and my drink problem. I mean, I knew it wasn't right, but I just never realised how bad I actually was, because I surrounded myself with people who were probably worse drinkers than myself. And so
Okay.
that's what you do when you're quite a clever drunk,
Mm.
When I actually went to speak to people and they were saying to me that I had a drink problem, massive drink problem, I was actually like, really? And I was actually not that far out, because the drink set things off in me, but it was nothing really to do with the drink. The drink brought me to my end. But in actual fact, there was much, much deeper issues within myself.
Mm.
Even when I put the drink down, I still didn't feel right. I certainly felt better, and I wasn't as frightened to go out, but I still had a lot of issues. And so the drink was the catalyst to get me sober. And then when I was getting sober, I started to understand and look at really sick patterns that had accumulated, a lot of negativity, a lot of darkness. And I had just gone from, I was never brought up like that.
Mm.
I was never brought up. I was brought up in a lovely family. My mum and dad were really cool. But yeah, I just completely went off the rails, and I don't think I ever knew how to get back. And when I went into recovery, I started to see new ways of living, and I started to understand myself at a completely different level.
So what do you think caused that then? You said that you came from a happy place, a happy environment with your parents and everything, because typically, sometimes I hear I had a really bad childhood and I was traumatized throughout my childhood, and then that led me on to X, Y, and Z. But it sounds like that really wasn't the case for you. So what do you what was that moment where you started going off the rails, I guess?
There was 3 sisters. I was in the middle, and I always felt different. I always felt I never fitted in. I was always doing things that got me into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And what I know now, from obviously being in, recovery and doing the tremendous amount of work that I've done on myself, and what I couldn't articulate it at the time. But basically, I didn't know anything about Veronica. I didn't know. I knew I was kind of living my mum and dad's life and not my life.
Mm.
And I think that's what I know that was what the problem was. So I was never, nothing was coming out of me that was mine.
Now, obviously, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, they pretty much would have had a similar upbringing and the environment around them would have been similar, but it came out of you in a very different way. Compared to your sisters, because of course everyone is different, and this is the thing when you look at siblings or friends or whatever. If something happens to me and the same thing happens to my friend, or I don't have any siblings, but whoever, my cousin, we will react in completely different ways.
That is correct.
Yeah,
that's absolutely spot on.
Yeah, so it's almost, I used to think, you know, you're brought up the same, you've experienced the same stuff pretty much, you know, why are you reacting like this and you reacting like this? You know, I've got 3 children, so sometimes I think, you know, why are you reacting like this and you're reacting like this? You know, and now I think, no, wait a minute, they're all different, and they will all react very differently to the same thing, and I need to understand that and accept that, and do things in a very different way, which is obviously what I do now. But at the beginning, I used to think, you know, you're brought up the same, you're the same, and why are you reacting like this, and why are you reacting like this? So
it's really fascinating that you say that, because, you know, my sisters, obviously I've spoke to them, you know, a while back, and same situation, but the 3 of us had a completely different perception. And they had we've got completely different relationships with our parents. Which is really, really fascinating. And that goes back to exactly what you're saying. We've got different ways of looking at it. We don't come in exactly the same, but my mum even dressed us the same. You know, it was like, when you really see it, you know, it was like, and I became quite rebellious. I just didn't know what I was rebelling against ever. And what I was rebelling against is that I didn't know who Veronica was. I didn't really know what I liked or what I wanted to do. I didn't really know how to take responsibility for me. And then all the way through, even when I had my own daughter, that was definitely a catalyst. I had her when I was 26, and she was 10-year-old when I got sober. But, I carried on that sick pattern of, well, we're going here, well, we're doing that, you'd be better wearing this. And it was only when I got into recovery that I seen how crippling that was, how there was no self-expression. And, I started to change everything. Me, the way that I was, the way that I spoke to my daughter. I think it's the biggest thing that mothers do. And I've worked with thousands of mothers, is that we would never treat our friends the way that we treat our kids. We don't give them the respect and what that they deserve. And actually, from me getting sober, my daughter is my best, she's been my greatest teacher.
Yeah.
And I've helped her undo the first 10 years of her life, learning all the things that I thought were the correct way to do things, because I'd been brought down that lineage, and it was completely, as far as I'm concerned, there was a lot of good things in it, but oh my God, there was a lot of bad things in it as well.
Yeah. I mean, it must have had a huge impact on her, right? I guess the first 10 years,
Massive.
seeing her mother going through what she was going through. And then they say, first 5 years of your life are very crucial.
First 7, yeah.
First 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
show me the man till he's 7, and then you show me the boy till he's 7, and then that's the man. So it's until you're 7-year-old, that's where your conditioning, your identification, these patterns are instilled in us.
Yeah, absolutely. So what age were you, do you think, that you started, I guess, masking? Really, you used alcohol to mask and probably numb what was going on with your feelings and your mind and things like that. What was that kind of point in life when that started? And I guess from then onwards until you were 36, it continued and kind of just spiraled out of control.
100%. So I started working when I was 15, and they were all going out for a drink, and I went up to the pub and I had a couple of drinks, and I'm unsure if you're aware, but I went straight into a blackout, so I couldn't remember a thing.
Oh, right.
So I was walking about, I was talking to Shreya like this, I was doing everything, but I had no memory of it. that was my first. I got home, I'm talking to my mum, but the next morning I had no idea where I'd been, how much I had drank, what was said, who I was talking to.
Mm.
I went into a blackout on the first amount of drink that I took. That kind of says something. Now, obviously, I've learned all about blackouts. I know exactly I know what everything is now, but there was too much unaddressed stuff inside me. I couldn't cope with anything. And I think the blackouts, you're just training your mind to, as you say, numb it. That's a really good term that you would use. So, you know, and that was my first introduction to alcohol. And you think you would just stop there, and think, right, okay, there's a problem. But I never. And I continued. And a lot of my drinking was in blackouts. And if it wasn't at the beginning of the night, because I got better and better, being able to at least focus for a while, towards the end of the night. I mean, I woke up in places that I had no idea where I was. It was miles away. I had no idea where I'd been, what we were talking. You can imagine, I've even woke up in police cells. I had no idea why I was there. It was bringing peace, for dancing on the tables and just crazy.
Yeah.
No idea.
This is in Scotland, right? You were born and raised in Scotland?
I was born and raised in Edinburgh.
Edinburgh.
Yeah, and this was in Edinburgh. And, when I was 27, I'd had my daughter. I walked out of my marriage when I was 8.5 months pregnant because of the violence. It was domestic violence, it was just absolute hell. And I had a part in that as well, I didn't really realise it then. I thought it was all his fault. But, there's two sides to every story. And that doesn't excuse anybody's behaviour. But I was as dysfunctional as he was.
Yeah, you mean that, you played the part in terms of the dysfunction. Yeah, and you also had alcoholism as a problem. Of course, that doesn't excuse, and it should never excuse domestic abuse. Of course, but you played your part in a different way, and it contributed to obviously other issues that came about from that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I walked out of the marriage. I was 8.5 months pregnant. He did all sorts whilst I was pregnant. But of course, I'm never going to be pregnant forever, am I?
Yeah.
After I had my daughter, he used to follow me around and threaten me. And, I was still drinking, obviously. And, it was just terror that's in you. Now, today, I wouldn't have that terror inside me. It just wouldn't happen. But back then, I had no idea what was going to happen. But one night, I went out drinking, to cut a long story short, and I took a crowbar and I actually smashed his van to smithereens.
Wow.
And I got caught. I'm using the car. And of course, the police have grabbed me. Again, it was really, I vaguely remember doing it, but I was in the police cells, once again, for vandalism. And, I got a lawyer after that. But I was 27-year-old. It was all over the papers, wife in debt gets revenge of the wronged woman. I was one of the first women that were in the papers with that kind of background, but I just had enough. And when the court case came up, I was actually, it had in it, that I was provoked beyond belief. It does not excuse my behaviour. It does not excuse my violence. And there is another way, but I didn't know another way to stop him following me and to stop getting into some, it was just too much. And so that was what I done. And I had the press, I had everybody at the door wanting my story, but I was so ill Postnatal depression. You know, I had a 10-month-old baby, and I'm smashing up the van, and then I've got all the press at the door. You can imagine my mother was like, you know, leave us alone, leave us alone. Anyway, it was in the paper. That has been my greatest asset. That whole journey has really brought me. It was, things went on for years after that. Does that make sense? It was I was 27-year-old then, and I was 36 when I got sober. But can you imagine the accumulation, never having dealt with one thing because I didn't know how to deal with anything. How do you know how to deal with something?
Yeah.
Even when you speak to people, you know, it's usually your pals, and you're like, oh, I feel, you know, suicidal. I really feel like just like jumping off a bridge. I mean, I would have, had it not been for my daughter. I was so suicidal. And I knew that she never had her father in her life. And I knew it was only me. And I think that's the only thing that kept me alive.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that kept me alive was knowing that I could jump off a bridge anytime I wanted to. I think that really helped me move through things. But I was very, very suicidal. And, you know, but it's been my greatest asset, because it would never have brought me to my end the way that it did.
Yeah. How did this have an impact on your family and your daughter?
Well, I mean, you know, particularly my daughter, it did have an impact on her. I mean, you know, only us two knew what was going on, because she was coming through and I was lying drunk. You know, cigarettes everywhere, drink everywhere. She would find I had my head in my CD drawer, you know, and she was really young. She was coming through and seeing that. So it did have quite, you know, it had a real effect on her. And for that, you know, it's like, what do you do? I mean, I had to deal with that in sobriety, and that is not easy to deal with. And she was more like the mother, and I was more like the child. I was that immature. However, what's been fantastic with that is that I've been able to articulate what happened to me, how I wasn't able to manage myself. There's no excuse for it, and I am not making excuses for myself. But when you're in that kind of mental state, I was oblivious, you know, I was really ill. And, you know, again, she's really understood it, you know, and we've been on a journey together. She's 37 years old now. She's a lawyer in London. She's doing phenomenal. She's keep fit. She doesn't drink. She doesn't smoke. I mean, she's really, really, you know, amazing. But we've been able to work through all the mess that I made. All the mess that I made. And I've been able to help her undo all the conditioning and identification that I never taught her. I never sat down and says, you do this, but you pick it up with being in, you know, and I've been able to help her undo all of that and become the beautiful young woman that she is today.
Yeah.
That's my greatest asset, you know.
Yeah. That's phenomenal. You know, a lot of people don't get that opportunity, and you worked through it together. And I think that must have helped the process be a lot, you know, speedier, that's for sure. And, you know, doing it together, knowing that you have effectively, you know, kind of caused the situation for her, you know, she's seen all of this now. How do you unpick that? How do you unravel it so that, you know, she doesn't go through life traumatized or you know, going through life, perhaps she may have ended up getting into alcoholism or something else, some other kind of addiction, you know, you don't know. But working on that together must have been absolutely phenomenal. It really must have.
I mean, I had to speak to her the way, like, I had to take ownership of being, you know, crazy. Take ownership of all the labels that were given to me. You know, I had to explain to her why I did what I did. I couldn't articulate it at the time. But through the years, I've been able to really nail it as to why I was like that, what happened to me, and how to get into the recovery that I am. And I've helped thousands of people. You know, I work with people all over the world, and they don't have to have the drink problem that I have. They still have the same issues. It's just I was an extreme case. And there's extreme cases to me, but I was very extreme. You know, so she did have her own drink problem. She seen her father for a short while, which was when she was 14. And in that short space that she seen her father, she ended up nearly dead, choking on her vomit. She was found nearly dead in Edinburgh. And I think that really brought us together in a phenomenal way. And I think she could see that because she didn't know how to deal with her emotions, she ended up with a blackout. She ended up nearly dead. And I think that really, really helped her understand where I had came from. Because I didn't go out and think, right, I'm going to get drunk tonight and I'm going to create havoc and I'm going to end up in the police cells and I'm going to... I never went out with that mindset.
Yeah.
And neither did she, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think that was a great, you know, she was only 14 at the time. It was transformational for both of us that happened and that she was alive, because she was a dangerous drunk, meaning, you know, she would choke on her vomit, or, you know, it was a very short space of time that she had it, but it was enough to help her understand where I had came from. I'm absolutely convinced that that happened to her so that she could understand why I was in the mess that I was in. And I didn't have somebody that came to me at that time and say, by the way, you've got a drink problem. Why don't you come along to this meeting? Why don't you go here? You know, I'm asking everybody, but I'm asking everybody in the pub. And they're like, oh, take another drink.
Yeah.
There was never like, you know, go and get yourself sorted out. It was like, you'll be fine. You weren't that bad. And that's what I'm like, oh, well, okay, then I must, you know.
Yeah. I'm amazed that no one, you know, not just so much approached you, but said, look, Veronica, what you're doing isn't right and you need help. Oh, they did. They did.
He says to me, what you're doing isn't right. Stop drinking.
Yeah.
You need to not drink anymore. And it's like, so what am I supposed to do at a party? And how do I stop drinking?
Yeah.
The compulsion was in, and I couldn't stop drinking. It was an addiction, which is a control, you know. It's like, the compulsion was there. And it's like, they were like, you know, you're a nightmare when you drink too much, stop drinking. But there was no solution. Have a cup of tea. I mean, I'm not wanting a cup of tea, you know. It's like, I need a drink. I couldn't live with myself sober. So, you know, when I used to wait till 5 o'clock to drink, that then became, you know, 4 o'clock and 3, and then it was like all day benders.
Yeah. So fast forward, you're now 36. You've, you know, at that moment, you've been saved, essentially.
100%.
Yeah, you were saved.
Honestly, it was so close.
Exactly. Now, how did you transform yourself to what you're doing now? Because that is a story in itself, you know.
And of course, that's not half it, you can imagine. But so first of all, you know, I put the drink down, I think, and the drugs. So I was smoking, you know, a lot of weed and, you know, just taking whatever I could to numb the pain. So all of that went down initially.
Is that through, were you kind of checked into an institution? Or
similar, you know, similar idea. So it was like, put everything down. That eventually, after a few months, you know, you're kind of like still living off everything. And I really, the panic attacks and the anxiety and the coming off stuff, just cold turkey, which, you know, I'm 27 years sober now. So it's like cold turkey. It was like, oh my God. I mean, I really did it in a really, really challenging way.
Why did you do it? Like, what
Yeah, I was really good at
cold
cooking.
turkey is quite, it's intense, like it's the complete other extreme, right?
It's the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was it. I mean, I did have to go to the doctor and I did have to get, beta blockers and different things. But I realized when I was on them, I thought this is going to lead me back to everything that I've already just came off. I remember going into the toilet one day and flushing everything down the toilet and thinking, I need to go through whatever this is and really come out the other end, which I did. It's not been an easy journey because you don't all of a sudden think, oh, is this what I'm like? Or, it hasn't been easy, and I've had various different mentors or teachers or whatever you want to call them that have came in, they've showed me so much. I've understood it, and then I needed the next bit. I had one, she was absolutely dynamite. She was so challenging on me, but she was the greatest teacher, in hindsight, I wanted to kill her. It was like, who are you speaking to? But she was really, really dynamic. And every time I said something, she was like, what's your part in it? What's your part in it? So even when I was telling her about my childhood and things that had went wrong and blah, 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 she was like, you had a part in it. Did they have a gun to your head? She would say. And I would say, no. She would say, well, you had a part in it. And that, obviously, you can imagine, I'm like, no, it was their fault. It was this. But I think I was about 2 or 3 years sober when somebody put me in front of her because I was ending up in the nut house again, because I was like, what's happening to me? So I'm sober for quite a period of time, and then I'm starting to,
your mind.
Where do I go from here? So I got taken so far, and then she came in and she was really, really good. And then when, I stayed with her for quite a few years, and she was really, it was really, really tough. I mean, I did a lot in my sobriety in Glasgow. It was really challenging. They don't miss the wall. It's hardcore. And, it was really, would I suggest anybody go through that? Not really, but that was my journey, and that was what I had to go through. And I think the more work that I did on myself, the deeper I went, the more understanding that came about, then the easier it became. And I started to work with other people, just help alcoholics, and addicts. And I started to see the benefit of that because it was actually helping me. And so when I was sharing my journey and kind of showing them, what I had done and different things, that really became, I had always been really disciplined, but disciplined negatively because I could get drink from anywhere. I never ever went short of a drink. I mean, that's a discipline in itself. I mean, it didn't matter what time it was, where it was, even if I had to knock on neighbours' doors, which I did, I got that drink. The discipline in that is incredible. And somebody showed me that. And they were like, if you were that disciplined on taking yourself to other levels, can you imagine where you could be? Nobody seemed to be able to give me the tools to be able to do that. They just said things and I understood it at a level. But I think what really helped is that nobody articulated what my emotions were, why I was angry, what it was that was going on inside me. And that really led me to wanting to understand it at a much deeper level. And I went to a psychiatrist, and I was way beyond what the psychiatrist could help me with. And he actually says to me, I can't help you. You've gone beyond what that is. Can you imagine? Here's me thinking, oh, well, that's good. I'm getting help here. And he tells me that I'm beyond. what he can't take me any further than he's taken me. That's it.
So what did you do then when he said, "I'm sorry, I can't help you"? Because you're at this point, you're 2 years sober.
I was quite a few years sober when I went to him.
Yeah, and now, you know, okay, so obviously the drink and the alcohol and
That's all
drugs
gone.
have stopped. That's gone. But
That's
your mind has now.
Mine's still crazy, but that's
Exactly.
all gone. And
Yeah.
I'm looking better. I'm doing far more exercise. All of that's came in. I look great. Everybody's like, oh, wow, you know, you're looking fantastic. But I'm still in here. Crazy.
Yeah, because it's almost like the alcohol and the drugs has been masking what's going on in your mind. It's been
Mhm.
numbing that, and now that you're off that, that's still there. That's your exactly. Your mind is going in its overdrive, right? Like complete overdrive,
100%.
because it's never, well, not never, but it's not had
Any
kind of
discipline,
exactly.
any training. It's like wild horses. It just kept kicking up, and I kept buying into whatever my head was saying. You know, I never realized that I was to be the master. I was the servant. If my mind says you need to go there and you need to do that, or she's looking at you, or this one, I'm buying into the mind.
Yeah. So what did you do? How did you control your mind?
So I was so sick of being sick sober. And I remember thinking, I need something else. I need something else. And at that time, it was very basic internet. I went onto the internet and I seen that there was this Chinese master out in Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I was like, that's where I need to go. That's where I need to go.
What, like a retreat or something?
Yeah.
Right.
It was an advanced retreat for meditation. I mean, I couldn't stay still for 2 minutes, never mind meditate. Anyway, I phoned up, told them all the lies of the day, that I could do everything that they asked for on this advanced course, and remortgaged the house, and off I went to Thailand for 6 weeks. And I think that was really the beginning. The Chinese master couldn't really articulate how I articulate it today.
Mm.
However, he on doing certain things within the body, so like yoga, qigong, tai chi, that started to really collapse my mind. It started to bring me back at a much sore place. And I started to see the difference. And I was like, oh my goodness, I need the two things. Because the psychiatrist and most people are just talking about stuff, and you're just talking the illness back in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, you know, yeah, there's only so much, like, you know, when you go and see a counselor or, you know, a psychologist, you're just kind of talking about your problems, but nothing's ever getting solved.
You're getting the solution.
Yeah, there's no solution. And it's kind of, this is what I hear a lot, you know, you just talk, regurgitating your problems. And
can you imagine how much that's reinforcing and you're not getting out of it? And that was where it was. And that was when I started to regress so badly. And they're like, you're 3.5 years sober. You're 4 years sober. How are you like that? It's like,
yeah.
The reason I was like that was that I didn't understand the mind. I didn't understand that I had to train my mind and I had to train my body to come back inside, and for me to run my mind, not for my mind to run me. That took a lot of years, and it took a lot of, you know, I did dynamic meditation. I mean, I went on from that Chinese master. He was really good. He gave me the insight that it was like, okay, I really need to do stuff with my body, and the qigong and the tai chi. I really took to yoga. I really quite liked the yoga. It was almost like, when I was in that moment, there was no mind. Can you imagine that? And I had no drink and I had no alcohol. And this was like, it was glimmer, it was nanoseconds, but it was like, oh, wow, that was what kept me going. So now I'm on a new path because I'm training my body, And in that, I'm understanding that I can collapse my mind, that I can bring my mind back, that I can make my mind do what I want it to do, or I can leave it running in the background and not listen to anything that is. That was life-changing for me.
So can I ask you a simple question of how do you control the mind then? In the sense, you know, if you're, you know, let's face it, we have negative thoughts from time to time. Some people constantly have negative thoughts, depending on whatever's going on. You know, I have negative thoughts. Sometimes I feel like shit, or, you know, whatever. Yeah, I mean, you know, let's be honest, right?
Absolutely.
You know, we're living in, I mean, I'm living here in the Western world, and, you know, social media, this, that, kids, whatever. My mind's in explosion mode sometimes. Okay. How do I reel it back in and get that sense of control? You know, I am the master of my mind, basically.
Correct. I mean, you know, the discipline, the mind's our biggest weakness, not the body. It's the mind. So nobody trains the mind. Nobody knows how to train the mind, right? So we're all physically doing something, but nobody shows you how to train the mind. And basically, it is about, once you understand the mind, you're not going to stop it, because there's no route. There's no route, so it's just going to keep kicking whatever up. But the more discipline that you have, and the more pointed focus that you have, so you're going where you're going, you're not going where the mind tells you to go, because it's a wonderful servant. It's a terrible master. And it is about training that mind. It's like wild horses.
Yeah.
Like training wild horses. It is just everywhere, you know, it's everywhere. I mean, even just sitting here, it can be like all over the place.
Yeah.
It's about bringing that in. And I personally, in my experience, and there's probably a million ways to do it, but in my experience, I had to do things like, you know, Tai Chi, Qigong. But the biggest thing that really helped me was yoga. And on my journey, I found out about dynamic meditation. And I ended up in an ashram in India that was probably about 100 years ahead of its time.
Wow.
And I went, and I was like blown away by what they were doing. And I don't want to go too much into that. However, I done everything because I wanted the experience of what they were doing, you know. All meditations, but none of them sitting meditations. None of them.
Sitting?
None of them were sitting meditations. They were taking you to a place where you would meditate. So they were dynamic. Unbelievable. So
what does that mean? As in, like, they take you to different areas, or?
No. So basically, one of the meditations that I did is that you jog on the spot. You get a spot on the wall, and for 15 minutes, you're just looking at that one spot on the wall. So it's a series of different things. Right. So you're jogging on, and you're not allowed to. This is you training the mind. So it's things like this that we're doing. So and then it takes me on to the next stage. So they're all different stages. And then I'm moving my eyes around. I'm doing all different things. And then when I've done 45 minutes in all different processes, I'm sitting there, and boom, stillness, meditation. Because I couldn't just sit down.
Yeah.
My head was too busy. There was other practices that I did, which is dynamic meditation, and it's like a series. It's 1 hour. And I did 1 hour every single day for 2 years of this meditation. And now I can sit. Well, I went on 8-day silence program, and I sat for 8 days in silence with a mystic. And I mean, that's a miracle. And that's how much I've trained my body and my mind. And it's the discipline and the structure in that discipline that has brought the freedom that I have in my life today. And I'm very, very free. And I do exactly what's right for me because I've been back there and I know what it's like, and I'm not going back there for anybody. So if somebody wants me to do something that's against everything that I'm about, it's like I'd rather die.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've came so far along. And it's like people like me, it's like it's experiential. Everything that I've done, I do not talk about something that is not in my experience. And when you go back to the psychiatrist and he's telling me that he can't help me, it's because they're doing it in a book, or this particular guy was, and he never had the experience. Whereas with my experience, I can take you to a level that's actually incredible. And I have done with many people.
Yeah.
Because I've actually had the experience, so I'm not stuck anywhere. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's not for everybody, because there's only a small percent of people want to be that disciplined and live that type of life. And if I don't have that level of structure, getting up at 5 o'clock every morning, doing my yoga, doing my meditation, does that make sense?
Yeah.
It would very quickly work against me. I would decline. I've tried it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll just do nothing today, It doesn't work.
Would you say that you talked about ADHD and dyslexia and things like that. Are you diagnosed with that, or is that just something you were talking about?
No, I've never went for the diagnosis. I don't need it. I had it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
know back then there was obviously, trying to get diagnosed with anything.
Yeah.
Half of it's dismissed anyway in that generation. And like you said, you're the naughty child, or you're a disruptive child, or whatever it is. And even, to be honest, to this day, a lot of children, they are dismissed, and that the diagnosis isn't there. It's it's a very long process to get diagnosed with hardly anything these days as it is. But okay, so you found something that works for you. Yeah. And given the ADHD and other things, and obviously the addictions and what have you. Now, my question is, again, everyone is different. Different things work for different people. Yeah. And you found the thing that works for you. Now, I want to ask you a question, because I know you've gone through a process and you now help other people transform their lives in many different ways. And when, this isn't just about transforming people's lives who have got addictions. It's transforming people's lives in other ways as well. It's not just about addiction. Can you talk a bit about what exactly you do now? Because you've got into some amazing stuff.
Yeah. I mean, what I do now is that, I've worked in everything from prisons. I got into the education system where it was the kids that were off the curriculum. So there was 33% of the kids off the curriculum. And again, they've got all the problems that I had. Yeah. Every single problem that I had at school, that I was having to face the wall, get the belt, sent home, all of these problems that I had was because I could not stop my head. Yeah. I had ants in my pants. It was like, and the trouble that you get into. And even when I was like, I'm dyslexic, so I would be missing big chunks of or reading things back to front, or I would be missing stuff out, and the teacher would be like, where does it say that? Really shouted at, and it's like, that's what I see. You couldn't say that at that. It was like I was blinded with fear. Because the teacher's bawling and shouting at you for something that's a problem. It's an emotional block.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no doubt about it. So I went into the schools and the prisons, and I helped, I've done all of these things. More now, just recently, I was working with business people. So again, they're in business. There's a challenge in their business, whatever that challenge be. And then I've helped them, work through that challenge. Each is individual. There is no, solution for everybody. But what I'm really expert at is getting to the root of what the problem is, and then showing them, like, taking the solution out of them. Because the solution's not in me, it's in them.
Yeah.
So that's where my expertise is. It's like, I never knew what my problem was. I thought it was the drink. The drink was just a catalyst. The problem was that I didn't know who Veronica was. I had no idea. I thought that life was that you get married, you have children, and happy ever after. That's what I thought life. That was how I was brought up.
Yeah, that's society. That's what a lot of people are taught. You go to school, you get an education up to whatever level, and then you find a life partner, you get married, and then you have kids. And then when you're 65, you retire, and then you start enjoying life.
And you enjoy your grandchildren. And that is the furthest from the truth. That is the biggest lie. I mean, I've been married twice. I tried it, albeit it was all in drink. I don't need to try it in sobriety because I know the truth. And I've had beautiful relationships. But, they go to a certain point. And then when I'm, learned whatever I've learned, or I don't want to be there anymore, then, I remove myself in a really beautiful way, and I still have, like, tremendous friendships there. Whereas, did I have that before, smashing up vans and taking the crowbars? And no, so everybody that has problems, they don't always know what the problem is. And when they come to me, I can tell them what the problem is right away, because I just need to ask a few things, and then I can show them what's happening in their life. And I can do it in a very short space of time, just because of the levels that I've had to go to within myself to see my patterns, to see the forms, to see my obstacles. And then that's one process in itself. And I think once you've seen that, or some people want to go deeper, some people just want to, have a quick look and then hop off, and all of it's okay, because that's where they are. But I've trained this last 6 months, some people, they started off and they just found it very profound, the way that my methodology is. And they were like, oh, wow, that I would love to work with people, because I know this one and that one, they've all got the problems. So I've trained them, and they're all very successful with that. But really, it was mostly business people. And I've worked in the sports world as well. I've worked with the top sports people in the world, champions, 7 times world champions, 9 times world champions. I've worked with lawyers, barristers, advocates.
Yeah.
So you name it. I've worked in Hollywood with actresses and actors. I've really done a really eclectic mix.
Yeah.
I love sports, and I really think that if you get the kids from the grassroots and you can help them understand them, so become really emotionally intelligent, so manage your emotions in a disciplined way that can fuel you and take you to a phenomenal level. I mean, I could not walk up the stairs when I was smoking and drinking without being breathless. And I had this, it was like emphysema. It was like a real, whirl in me. And that was, when I got to the top of the stairs, I'm sitting there for 5-10 minutes to get my breath back. That was where I was when I was smoking and drinking. Then I went on to climb Kilimanjaro and get to the top. I ran 6K, 10K, a half marathon, and then I ran the New York Marathon. And today I'm up at 5 every day doing Ashtanga yoga, which is really dynamic. I'm putting myself through the paces, because the feeling when I come out the other end far surpasses the pain and the getting up at 5 o'clock and having to do these things. It's just I am training my mind all day, every day. And if you're willing to put that discipline in, then your life can be whatever it is that you want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that discipline, you talk about you waking up at 5 a.m. and doing yoga and other things, a series of other things.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not for everyone, and that is not it's not going to work for everyone because everyone has a different lifestyle. But I assume you plant the seed for whatever works for them.
Absolutely. I mean, some of my clients, not all my clients get up at 5 o'clock and do yoga. I mean, there's absolutely no chance. But what they do is what is correct for them. I have a 20-minute program called Inner Size, and all it is 20 minutes. And if you do that 20 minutes every single day, and it's not hugely dynamic, anybody can do it at any age, then you will have a stability for the rest of that day. And it's very, very profound.
So,
what I do, which is like quite a long process.
Yeah.
What, clients come into me and they're like, oh, I could never do that. And it's like, no, that's what I'm doing. You ask me what I'm doing. You don't have to do any of that. But this 20-minute is so profound and dynamic that it's called Inner Size. So it's for the inner work. It's not exercise, it's inner size. So it's a very, very short version, but it stabilizes your mind and it takes them much deeper. I mean, I was on the phone to a client this morning, she's went from absolutely, there is not a chance in hell am I doing this or the next thing. And now she's up at 5 o'clock every morning and she's doing a whole load of her stuff. And, I was just saying to her this morning, her face is glowing. I said, you look fantastic. And she's like, I absolutely feel it.
Yeah.
And, her workload is, she's running her own business. She has a salon. I mean, it's like full on. And we've taken that to 3 days now. So she only works in it 3 days. So she was working in it 7 days and now she's working in it 3 days and she's making more than what she did in the 7 days. And she's working, she does couples, for weddings using the mythology that I use. So it's when you see that happening, it's like, wow. I'm not the easiest person because I'm very, very direct. And it's not because I'm not easy, it's that I just blow through and cut through all the nonsense, I really do. I won't mollycoddle you. I'll give you it as it is. And so it's not for everybody. But for the people that do come to me and that do want to transform their life, it's incredible.
Yeah. So you're going through life, okay? Not you, like everyone's going through life, whatever they're going through. I think most people haven't taken time out to sit and think, what do I want?
Oh, you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. And I don't think many people do really. Or they think that they know what they want, but they probably don't.
Correct. Yeah,
because it's not personally, I don't think it's something that you just discover by sitting there for an hour saying, what do I actually want? And then all of a sudden you've figured it out and off you go.
And now, that is so true.
What is, for people out there wondering, they have their moments of what the hell am I doing? Like, what is this? Is this my life? What advice do you give? How do you get through that? How do you actually start to really do the deep work to think, what do I want? And now I know roughly what I want because I'm assuming it's an ongoing process. It's not something
always.
Yeah, exactly.
It's infinite. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you work towards that and start, getting closer to what you want?
So I think it's baby steps, but I think the greatest gift that you can give to the world is to be well. So health, what's the saying that I heard? It's like, when you're really well, you've got thousands of problems, but when you're ill, you've got one problem, and that's getting well.
Yeah.
I thought that just encapsulated it. So I was really ill mentally, not physically, but mentally. And it takes its toll on you physically, but what I mean was, so well-being is what everybody's looking for, regardless. There's nobody wants to be ill, albeit that they're victims and they get more attention and
a
whole load of stuff that comes with that. Ultimately, we want to be well. So I think the first thing is that looking at, where am I? And am I happy with where I am? I think that's the very first thing that you do. And if you don't know the biggest thing that you want, or you don't have a small goal, the main thing that you want is well-being. And I think that if you can say, am I in the right space? Am I physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically? If you look at these fundamental areas and start working on them, that is the foundation for like brilliance. It really is. Because this, just as I get to another level inside myself, it's like there's another level and another level and another level. So I've never ever stopped. So 27 years of, going through all different levels. And again, as you know, I've just been, all sort of around the world. And even just doing that, it's like there's even more levels now. And even more levels, and it's like, wow. And it's quite an incredible journey. But the journey for me today is the inward journey. My external journey didn't work for me anymore. And you can have the house, you can have the car, you can have the lover, you can have the boy, whatever you think's going to fix you. None of them really fixed me. But the way that I feel today and the lifestyle that I have today, I mean, people would be like, well, that's boring, because that would how it would be appear to them. But in actual fact, it's anything but. And I absolutely love the life that I have and the space that I'm in. But I know that I've only just begun and that I'm still on a journey, and it's a beautiful one. And my biggest thing is well-being. My biggest thing is understanding at deeper and deeper levels, Veronica. And when you take Veronica away, you're left with the infinite, and that's another level. It's quite incredible. Because I never knew the first thing about myself. I knew I could tell you everything about Shreya, but I couldn't tell you anything about Veronica.
Yeah.
Now, I just need to know me, and then I know everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it obviously it takes time, and the focus is on your well-being. Now, for most people that are on the hamster wheel of working 9 to 5 or 9 to 9, whatever their hours are, or perhaps even in the middle of the night, they never come off that hamster wheel.
No.
And they want to, perhaps, but they never do, because it's just a continuous thing. They never take the time out to think about what they want or who they are, or what, all these things. Can you kind of just give one piece of advice on how people can come off that hamster wheel, just for, whatever?
I mean, it's everybody's different, and everybody does it different. I was in corporate. I was on the hamster wheel. I bought a brand new flat. I had another flat. I had just brought a brand new car, and I had had enough of corporate life. And I was like, well, what do you love doing? Well, I love doing this. I love doing well-being, and I loved like speaking with people and working with people. And I just handed my notice in it, and I left, and I had these flats and these cars, and I had no money coming in, because I've never had any money for my daughter of her father. So I've never had any help financially. And I was like, oh, wow, there was nothing coming in. So I did it quite a challenging way. But, I got through it. Is that the right thing to do? Well, it was for me, and it took me to where it took me, and it was really quite profound. In fact, I just had one of my trainers do exactly the same. She was in corporate, she's had enough, and she just was like, that's it. She did have some backup. I never had any backup or support. She just did it, but she did it. And I thought, I thought, kudos to you, you know?
Yeah.
And she's doing this now, and she's loving it. I think it's baby steps, and it's like, what can you cope with? You hear it all the time. What do you really love doing? You've got to do something that you love, because if you don't love it, it won't work, and you are just a robot, and you're working for, you know, whatever. So basically, it's like, if you don't know what you want to do, it is about starting with the well-being and baby steps, like what in corporate, or what in my job, or what in my career is it that I like. And I think it's defining that down. And my thing was, like, obviously people. I was in sales, and I loved helping people to get a really good deal and to help them get exactly what they wanted. And I was the worst salesperson in the world when I was drinking, because I was pressurizing myself and them.
Yeah.
But when I got sober and I started doing it, it was like I had to understand, what is it that you're looking for? What would, and that way, and sometimes it wasn't my whatever it was that I was selling. And I felt really happy with that. And I was like, you know, I started to make a lot of networking people, and I would say, okay, so, you know, I can't give you this, but I'll give you somebody who can. And I always found a solution for them. So I became, you know, super successful. I was #1 in the UK. I went to the President's Club in sales. You know, so if you're sitting at the side of the road in a bottle of vodka, greeting, wondering how I was going to get sales, to actually going to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And then it was like, why would I continue to make these companies the money when I can, you know, do it myself? That's a whole other thing. But I think it's just, you know, if I was to ask you, what one thing do you really like about what you do? And then it's taking that one thing and then just looking at it from there, and then it starts to open up. So mine's just people, helping people, working with, I think everybody's helping people in some way, you know. But I just took it to whole new levels. And now when I go in, you know, people will say, oh, my staff, or my finances, or whatever it is. And I never work with anything that they've asked me about. You know, it's nothing to do with that. I just start working with them.
Yeah.
And that's key, because you are your business, regardless if you're an employee or not. You are your business, and whatever your energy or motivation, or if you're negative or whatever it is, you're working against yourself, and you've got to work for yourself. You have to work what makes you feel right.
No, that's fantastic. Veronica, thank you so much for all your insights and talking about your journey. It's been an amazing journey of transformation, that is for sure. And obviously, you know, all your details are going to be in the show notes. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, you can be found there. But thank you. Thanks so much for your time.
And thank you, Shreya. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.